Welcome back, everyone, to the ACME Real Fantasy Football Podcast, where we break down all the highs, lows, and drama of the most competitive football league out there. I'm your host, D-Cypher, and we've got an exciting show for you today. From standout performances to tough injuries, we're covering it all. Stick around for the game of the week, injury updates, and of course, a look at next week's matchups. Let's dive in. Before we dive into the games, let's talk about what makes ACME Real Fantasy Football the most competitive fantasy football league out there. With over 200 free agents available every week, we offer more flexibility than any other league. Injuries? No problem. Underperforming starters? You've got options. ACME's deep free agent pool ensures that you always have a chance to field a winning lineup. Don't sleep on those free agents. They can be the difference between a win and a loss. Keep that waiver wire working. Now, let's dive into the standings after week 10. We're getting into crunch time, folks, and some teams are soaring while others, well, let's just say they're sinking faster than the Titanic. At the top of the food chain, the Killers are holding on to that number one spot with an 8-2 record, crushing it with a points average of 31.19. They're sitting pretty, but Rump Rangers is right on their tail, just one win behind with a higher overall point average of 31.25. Talk about a photo finish. Meanwhile, Todd's Tough Mofos are showing no signs of slowing down either, with a matching 8-2 record but trailing in points at 29.69. You know they'll be gunning for that top spot in the coming weeks. But hey, don't count out the Ballbusters at number 4. Their 6-4 record doesn't tell you the whole story though. They're riding high with a solid 30.43 points per game. Consistency is key, and after that, the Ballbusters might just surprise all of us in the playoffs. Now, sitting in the middle of the pack, we've got the Lickety Splitters and TDs, both at 5-5. These teams are like wild cards. You never know what you're going to get week to week. One week they're the heroes, the next, the zeros. It's a coin flip, but hey, that's what makes fantasy football so exciting. On the flip side, Bod Squad at number 7 and Sock Monkey at number 8 have had a tough break this season. Bod Squad is barely hanging on at 4-6 record, but they still got a fighting chance. Meanwhile, Sock Monkey is 3-7 and it is not looking great. I'm talking Hail Mary pass in the final seconds kind of odds, but stranger things have happened. And now for the bottom of the bottom standings, it's Bodily Harm, Joe Buck Yourself, T-Money, and Illuminati. It's been a rough season for these squads. Illuminati sitting at 3-7 might need a miracle or a complete roster overhaul to climb out of last place. But hey, it's not over till it's over, and if anyone knows how to make a comeback, it should be Illuminati, right? Maybe not. We've had some unfortunate injuries that could impact lineups moving forward. First up, Carolina Panthers running back Miles Sanders was carted off in the second quarter with a foot/ankle injury. He's currently doubtful to return for week 10, but we'll keep you posted as more details come in. Panthers tight end Ian Thomas is also dealing with a calf injury and is set for questionable to return. These injuries could shake up your fantasy roster, so make sure you're paying attention to those waiver wires. Alright folks, it's time to break down some of the matchups, and let me tell you, this week was no joke. We had nail biters, blowouts, and a few more surprises, so buckle up, because this round of games was wild. First up, we have Lickety Splitters squeaking by T-Money 23-19. It wasn't the highest scoring affair, but the Lions defense came to play, racking up 4 sacks, 2 interceptions, and a solid 8 fantasy points. They were the unsung heroes of this matchup, but let's pour one out for the 0 Points Club this week. Mike Gesicki, Sterling Shepard, and Michael Pittman Jr. Ouch. When your stars go cold, it's a tough pill to swallow. Next up, the Todd's Tough Mofos continue to live up to their name, taking down Joe Buck Yourself 27-22. The Bills defense came in hot, notching 4 sacks, 3 interceptions, and 8 fantasy points to seal the deal. Joe Buck Yourself just couldn't keep up despite a valiant effort. The Mofos look like they're ready to make a deep playoff run. Now, let's talk about the Killers versus Sock Monkey. The Killers absolutely dominated with a 25-17 victory. Joe Mixon had a relatively quiet day, but even 46 rushing yards and 1 touchdown was enough to pad his stats with 3 fantasy points. Meanwhile, Davante Adams, yes, the Davante Adams, joined the 0-point club this week. That's not a typo. Sometimes even the stars go dim, folks. Moving on to the high-flying action of bodily harm against Ballbusters. The Ballbusters lived up to their name, crushing it with a commanding 36-22 victory, and the standout performance? None other than Jamar Chase, with a jaw-dropping 264 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns, and a ridiculous 12 fantasy points. When Chase is on, he's unstoppable. Finally, we had a heart stopper between Bod Squad and Illuminati, with Bod Squad just barely edging it out 26-25. This one was so close you could taste the tension. Vikings defense was the MVP here, pulling off 3 sacks, 2 interceptions, and scoring 10 fantasy points. Illuminati put up a fight but just came up shy of the win. This episode of the ACME Real Fantasy Football Podcast is brought to you by, well, us. ACME Real Fantasy Football, where the thrill of the game is just one click away. Sign up today at acmerealfantasyfootball.com and get in the game. Now, folks, this is the one we've all been waiting for. The game of the week was an absolute thriller. 2 juggernauts went head to head, and it came down to the wire. I'm talking about TDs versus Rump Ranger, and oh boy did they deliver. The final score, 31-33 in favor of Rump Rangers. That's right, it was a nail-biter with both teams going back and forth all game long. Every point mattered in this one, and the true MVP of this matchup was none other than the Eagles' defense. Those birds were a wrecking ball out there with 3 sacks, 4 fumbles, and a monster 11 fantasy points. That's the kind of defensive performance that changes games. And let's not forget TDs, who put up a valiant fight. They weren't going down without a battle, but Rump Ranger just had too much firepower this week. It's games like these that remind us why we love fantasy football. The thrill, the heartbreak, the what-if moments that keep us on the edge of our seats. What a game. These top-tier teams going punch for punch, but in the end, Rump Ranger takes home the victory and they earned every single point. Now, let's take a look at what's coming up next in Week 11. We've got some exciting matchups to look forward to. The Rump Rangers on a 2-winning streak go up against Killers, also on a 2-winning streak. Someone's getting their streak cut short. Who will it be? Then, TDs take on Joe Buck Yourself. Todd's Tough Mofos go against Sock Monkey. T-Monkey goes up against Ballbusters, who is currently sitting on a 3-win streak. Bodily Harm goes up against Bod Squad. And lastly, Lickety Splitters on a 2-win streak faces Illuminati. It's shaping up to be another action-packed week. Which teams will rise and which will fall, only time will tell. And that wraps up Week 10 of the ACME Real Fantasy Football Podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and as always, keep your roster set, your trades smart, and your lineups locked. I'm your host, D-Cypher, signing off, and until next time, folks, may the fantasy odds be ever in your favor.